Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Thursday, September 24th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. 9:38, actually. Yeah, you know what? Well, it's getting to be a habit, isn't it? Starting a little bit late. We're going to have to clean that up. GMing Tips Day is Thursday. And that also means that being the 196th show, 4 more days till we hit the magic 200 number. I think what we're going to do, because that's on a Monday, that'll be interesting. Monday's a good day for a kind of a milestone. Didn't plan it that way, I know. We're 6 months in, and it shouldn't be quite 200. So some extra shows. But most of that happened early on, those extra shows. So that's just kismet that we got some extra shows in to push a 200th episode to a Monday. Just how it worked out. Hey, I've been looking at some stuff, and I found some stuff in the DMG that is probably more in line with campaign discussion for Wednesday, but I don't know. It doesn't happen up a lot of times in campaigns I've played in, even long ones where you think it would be more likely. And I know that players express an interest in doing territory development by their characters. That is to say, building a castle or just plunking down in a location and kind of making it better, putting some of their resources back into the community that helped them when they were starting off and just heading off to the nearby dungeon. Maybe they got a few discounts. Maybe they had some armor or a weapon repaired for free, provided, they promised to take care of the town someday if they ever needed. Anyway, territory development is something that DMs can do. GMing tip here. But try not to let it overwhelm the campaign, because not every player will be into it. And if you wind up with whole sessions where people are doing estate management, that can be a large part of certain campaign settings like Birthright, but it doesn't even have to be a large part of those types of setting campaigns, because you can you can do that off screen. You can fudge it. You can hand wave it. You can shorthand it, which is what I suggest, is just to let it happen or help make it happen in an expedited way so that it has some bearing on the campaign, but it isn't the focus of the sessions. Those should be, in my opinion, action-oriented, and going around collecting the 5% that every farmer on your tenancy and is supposed to be paying out to you every month is not what most players will enjoy, and certainly not the ones that aren't getting the money. Because I think you'll find that whoever is doing the territory development, there will be others in the campaign, amongst the players, that have no interest in that sort of thing whatsoever, and are just, if they're not interrupting, they're patiently waiting until you get that out of the way so they can continue to adventure, which is the crux of most games, and decidedly so. Well, Page 93 of the DMG, first edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, has a whole section on territory development by player character. Let's dive in and we'll talk about it in chunks so that we can add some tips on top of it, right? When player characters reach upper levels and decide to establish a stronghold or rule a territory, you must have fairly detailed information on hand to enable this to take place. Not really. I know what they're saying. If you read this stuff and know what it is and have it in your brain, you can shorthand most of this. Maybe all of it. You must have a large-scale map which shows the areas where this is possible, a detailed cultural and social treatment of this area and those which bound it, and you must have some extensive information available as to who or what lives in the area to be claimed and held by the player character. Must. Now, you can, and certainly, here's the thing, the more detail you put into it, hey, Alexfire, how you doing? The more detail you put into it, the more likely it is to become a major part of every time you play. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's only good for one player. Maybe that's only good for you. So make sure you know before you do all that work which aspects of that work are going to be most important to the players at the table, and key on those. Don't do that other stuff. Shorthand it. Like I say, hand wave it or shorthand it. Find ways to encapsulate the information that they suggest you must have in a sentence or two. And it doesn't have to be super detailed. If they ask about it, you can get into it more, but I think my GMing advice is to downplay it as important, as less important than pressing matters of adventure, so that most of the players can be happy doing that. Let it be a part of the world and the setting for the player characters. Let there be an income. Let there occasionally be an uprising or an attack from outside your area that they have to help defend because, well, they're Lord of the Manor, whatever it is. And let that be a part of the ongoing campaign. But don't make the entire campaign about that unless the players absolutely insist on it. Because I'm telling you, most of it won't be adventuring. Most of it will be bookkeeping and estate management and stuff that I'm not going to say D&D wasn't intended to do, because obviously that's part of what D&D was hoping to master with these sections of the Dungeon Master's Guide. But played since '74, and I got to tell you, the number of players that are super into this sort of campaigning are very, very few, and the number of them that think they are might be a few more, but once they've played a few times in this sort of thing, it becomes a lot less interesting to them. Most of these things are provided for you, however, in one form or another, in this work or in the various playing aid packages which are commercially available. The exact culture and society of the area is up to you, but there are many guides to help you even here. Assume that the player in question decides that he will set up a stronghold about 100 miles from a border town, choosing an area of wooded hills as the general site. He then asks if there is a place where he can build this small concentric castle on a high bluff overlooking a river. Unless this is totally foreign to the area, you will inform him that he can do so. You give him a map of the hex where the location is and the 6 surrounding hexes. The player character and his henchmen and various retainers must now go to the construction site, explore and map it, and have construction commence. If you have not already prepared a small-scale map of the terrain in the area. And we should say, let's back up just a second there, because can construction commence that quickly? Probably not. There are probably things there that would make construction rather difficult, and I'm talking mostly about creatures. If they're 100 miles past the last border town out into the wilderness, there are going to be large predatory creatures there that, oh, we felled a few trees, we're getting started, let's camp for the night. Uh-oh, we lost 3 guys in the night. Something snuck into camp and ate their faces. You can't have that. So you have to go clear that land first of creatures as best you can. You're going to need some rangers to track and to find layers. You're going to have to definitely make sure that there are some scouts or patrols off at the limits of this area that you're trying to now claim as your own, to be sure that no new predators come into the area, because sure as shooting, many times, says Lexfire, many times as you build details in a campaign, the players zig to your zag, no doubt, and explore in other areas. Keep it simple and high-level ideas and more nimble, absolutely. So once you clear out an area, you're going to find that you've created a void that other predators are going to want to fill, because that is just the way of nature. So you have to constantly be making sure, until this area is civilized, settled, inhabited by large groups of people that tend to keep predators away because it's dangerous for them, then you will have predators continue to come into an area. If you have not already prepared a small-scale map of the terrain in the area, use the random generation method when the party is exploring. That's fun. Disregard any results that do not fit with your ideas for the place. Both you and the player concerned will be making maps of the territory on a scale of about 200 yards per hex. That is tight, so that 9 across, the widest part, will allow the superimposition of a large hex outline of about 1 mile across. Use actual time to keep track of the game time spent exploring the mapping. Somewhat tedious but necessary. Tedious, yes. Check but once for random monsters in each hex, but any monster encountered and not driven off or slain will be there from then on, excepting, of course, those encountered flying over or passing through. After mapping the central hex and the 6 which surround it, workers can be brought in to commence construction of the castle. As this will require a lengthy period of game time, the player character will have to retain a garrison on the site in order to assure the safety of the crew and progress of the work. Each day there will be 1 in 20 chance that a monster will wander in to one of the 7 hexes explored by the characters, unless active patrolling in the territory is carried on. While the construction is underway, the character should be exploring and mapping the terrain beyond the core area. Here, the large scale of about 1 mile per hex should be used, so that in all the character can explore and map the entire campaign hex. There are many 1 mile hexes in the 30 mile across campaign hex, so conduct movement and random monster checks as is normal for outdoor adventuring. Again, any monsters encountered will be noted as living in a hex as appropriate until driven out or killed. However, once a hex is clear, no further random monster checks will be necessary except as follows. Once per day, a check must be made to see if a monster has wandered into one of the border hexes, which are adjacent to the unexplored, uncleared lands. Once per week, a check must be made to see if a monster has wandered into the central part of the cleared territory. Monsters which are indicated will generally remain until driven out or slain. Modifiers to this are: number 1, posting and placement of skulls, carcasses to discourage intelligent creatures and monsters of the type able to recognize that the remains are indicative of the fate of creatures in the area. Number 2, regular strong patrols who leave evidence of their passing, aggressively destroy intruders. Number 3, organized communities whose presence and militia will discourage all but organized groups who prey on them and certain monsters who do likewise. Assuming that the proper activity is kept up and the castle is finished, then the player character and entourage can take up residence in the stronghold by patrolling the territory regularly, about once a week on a sweep basis, or daily forays to various parts of the area. The character will need only check once each week for incursions of wandering monsters, Appendix C, or the uninhabited wilderness table. Checks must also be made on the inhabited table. If no road goes through the territory, then but one such check per week is necessary. If a road goes through, then 3 checks per week must be made on the inhabited table. This can be profitable if the encounters are with merchants and pilgrims, less so with certain other types. At such time as the territory has more than 30 miles of inhabited patrolled land from center to border, then only the second type monster checks are made, and all unfavorable ones, save 1 per month, are ignored. This reflects the development of civilization in an area and the shunning by monsters of the usual sort. Things such as Anheg might love it, however, and bandits may decide to make it a regular place of call. As usual, any monsters not driven off or slain will settle down to enjoy the place. If regular border patrols are not kept up, then the territory will revert to wilderness status, unless the lands around it are all inhabited and patrolled. In the latter case, all of the unsavory monsters from the surrounding territory will come to make it a haven for themselves. Because this is a fantasy adventure game, it is not desirable to have any player character's territory become tame or staid. There may always be a chance for some monster to enter the area and threaten the well-being of its inhabitants. What is the answer if the territory is located in the heart of some powerful state? Intrigue and petty wars, of course. If the territory of the player character is part of a nation, then there will be jealous neighbors, assassins, and the like to threaten him or her. In this case, you will have to devote more personal effort to seeing to it that there is still adventure and excitement involved in maintaining the fief. In territories hacked from the wilderness, the fame of the owner will eventually spread so as to attract inhabitants to the safety of the area. They will begin to appear after the player character's stronghold is finished and the patrols have generally cleared the area. The populace will match the area and the alignment of the character. When a random monster check reveals some form of creature who properly matches the potential inhabitant type for the territory, then have them move in and settle down, making proper subservience calls upon the master of the territory naturally. Hamlets, thorps, and various other settlement forms will eventually be established here and there in the area, starting near the castle and working towards the fringe of the territory. Once these territories become settled and population abounds, relatively speaking, they can be used as centers for activity, good or evil or whatever. That is, they can attract a more of the ilk which inhabit them, draw opponents, swarm to exterminate them, trigger raids or reprisals, etc. Much of this depends upon the action being taken, hopefully, by the player character forming active groups from the population base and doing something. But, as a last resort, action which you initiate by setting up a series of circumstances which will bear upon the territory. fighters and clerics will be the principal territorial developers. Magic users will typically become involved to a lesser extent, and they have many more demands upon their time. The real benefit of player characters developing territory is the addition to your milieu. These areas become focal points for action in the campaign if properly encouraged and handled, and if things grow a bit slow. The DM invented threat to some territory is bound to get things moving with the land. Going back to the construction of the stronghold, when the player elects to build, he or she must be required to furnish you with a duplicate set of plans of the castle grounds, its dungeons, and interiors as well. At the same time, you can give the player a free hand in drawing a small-scale map of the area immediately around his or her stronghold, say on a 1 hex equal 30 yard basis. So about 1/2 mile area hex can be depicted on a normal sheet of small hex paper, and a bit beyond shown as needed. With your copy of this map, you can plan sieges and other attacks as they occur. If for any reason a player who has developed territory gives up the campaign or simply drops the character in favor of another, you can then take over these areas and run them as you like to benefit your campaign. In all respects, then, development of territory by player characters is a highly desirable aspect of the campaign. It gives purpose to play and provides long periods where the player can be actively involved in the actual direction of the campaign milieu, which will eventually benefit things regardless of what transpires at a later date. We'll end there on what we're looking at, but I do want to make some comments about most of this I covered when I gave my preamble toward the beginning there. The last section here, though, there's a lot of good that can come of this. It does give added purpose to play. It doesn't have to be as involved in this to do that. And if I have a major GMing tip to come out of all of this, it is just that. Don't spend any more time on this kind of development during actual game sessions than necessary. Because while it is developing your campaign world, while it is developing your setting, it might not necessarily be developing the campaign. The campaign has to be driven by the players. You can throw stuff in front of them, you can throw obstacles, you can throw story elements, NPCs, here's the names of some countries, here's their heraldry, here's who's in charge, here's the lineage of this kingdom. You can throw all of that stuff in there, but you got to wait and see where they bite before you decide to expand on one aspect of this or another. When they get to higher levels, by the time they get to higher levels, they will already have been talking to you about what their aspirations are for their particular character, as far as potentially building a stronghold or taking over a town or an area, so that they have a home or a headquarters, or a stronghold, something. Wizard's Tower, a temple for a cleric, a fresh thieves guild for one of your ne'er-do-wells. So, take your cues from the players, and don't be so quick to force a campaign to become about estate management and bookkeeping. You can lose some players that way. You can certainly drive some mad, and if if you have players that will go along because they don't know that you've decided to make the whole campaign about this going forward, and they hang on for a session or two, or it's going to be hard to turn that back around. Even if they listen for the cues, listen for the hints, and if they outright say, "This is not tripping my trigger here," then make sure you backpedal as fast as you can out of that line of gaming and shorthand it. That's my advice. Do all of this stuff if they're interested in this sort of stuff, but keep it brief. Don't make your actual game sessions about it. Don't spend a ton of time on this stuff outside of those game sessions unless you know for a fact that the players want more details in particular areas. And they'll give you the clues on them. So there you go. Yeah, we're pretty close to time, so we're going to wind it down. I do want to thank everybody who pops into the chat during these things, for sure. I do want to say, GMing tips, PC territory development. There you go. What a great day. It's our 196th episode. Next Monday will be number 200. We will do something special. Tell your friends. Put aside the time. Make sure you're going to be here. We'll do some stuff live on next Monday to sort of commemorate. I don't want to say celebrate. Half a year of COVID is nothing to celebrate, but we can commemorate. We can mark the moment. It is a milestone. And I also want to say, come on back tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Tomorrow and every day, because we do stuff. And what are we doing tomorrow? Well, we're building adventures on Fridays, GM reviews on Saturday, rules retrospective on Sunday, weekly news and announcements on Monday, with the big 200 episode this coming Monday, cartography and world building on Tuesday, campaign discussion on Wednesday, back around the horn to GMing tips. If you're picking up on what we're putting down on YouTube, please do subscribe. We appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up. Make some comments if you have some constructive criticism for us, because it's always good to make the show a little better. I want to thank everybody in the Twitch stream. I want to thank everybody who comes to us through YouTube. I want to thank my wonderful Patreons. Some of the early ones. Tom Tullis, and Heath from Australia, and Shane, my buddy locally, are all wonderful, wonderful people. Much appreciated. Sean jumped on board for a little while and helped us out, and appreciate that. And Carlos as well is one of the newer Patreons. We're not doing much with that. There's no I'm not incentivizing people to go and join Patreon. If you feel like it, that's great. If you don't feel it's necessary right now, I'm not looking to make that a big part of this, so I'm just thanking the people that are on there. Anywho, come on back tomorrow here at the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.